a great way to start. Hi, everybody. It's Belinda. It's Belinda Allen, and it's Mariano Gomez, and it's Steve Endow, and we are so excited with our Power Platform share. I'm down there in the bottom. What is exciting? I don't even see Mariano on the screen. What is so exciting today is our guest. And before we introduce our guest, let me quickly remind you how and what this event is and our little share here. And then I'll introduce my co-hosts. So you may recall, I don't know how long ago it was, maybe a year or so ago, Steve Endow and Mariano and I were we were emailing each other about things we were doing with the Power Platform. Probably Steve took it to Twitter. I said, I want to see that. Somebody else popped up and said, I want to see that too. So we decided just to do our little shares on YouTube. And so it's always my three wonderful co-hosts and very dear friends, Mr. Steve Endow from California. Hello, Steven.
Greetings.
And then also the person off the screen, dear friend from the East Coast with me, Mr. Mariano Gomez. Hey, Mariano.
Hey, Belinda, how are you?
Good. And Mariano is just coming back. He had some, well, I guess it would be considered somewhat minor surgery, but I
Yep.
am so glad you are doing well. And I am so
Thank you. I
happy you're
appreciate
back at
that.
work. Yeah, I was worried about you being in the hospital. Steve sent
Yeah,
me
it
a
was it
message.
was minor.
Steve said he didn't really care, but I really care.
Yeah.
so, so Mariano, you invited some super exciting guests today. So why
Yes,
don't you
so
introduce them?
I am super thrilled to have these two guys here because, they're a couple folks that I truly look up to in the community, and I follow them fervently, and I admire what they do as community members, and certainly as Microsoft MVPs. So, and my lower left corner, I have Mr. Shane Young. Hi, Shane.
Hello, Mariano. Thanks for having me, everyone.
And on the lower right of my screen, I have Mr. Samuel Adranyi, and I hope I never butcher that because it's always, a little complicated to pronounce other folks' last names when you're not typically familiar with the pronunciation, local pronunciation, I should say. So, Shane and Samuel, thank you very much for being here. Samuel, let's start with you, brother. Um, where you hail from?
Well, so I am originally from Ghana, Accra to be precise. Funny enough, I was based in the US for a while up until last year. I was in Portland, Oregon. And I decided, I think it was time to come home with the family and, help grow with the tech ecosystem. So if you notice,
Oh,
almost all the things I do is, community based, trying to help people, use technology in different ways, grow themselves. So yeah, originally from Ghana, and that's just the story, of my
And
life.
for those of you who don't know, Samuel is a newly minted Azure MVP. So congrats.
Wow, congratulations.
yay! He's a
Yeah,
Tell us
baby.
yeah.
tell us a little bit about that journey, Sam. How did that go for you?
Well, so it was I think it was very an interesting journey for me. I wasn't really expecting it at some point, because when I got back, the whole idea was to build community to enable developers, to get people onto technology. Because during my stay in the US, I was like, hold on, I was actively involved in like meetup groups, and I looked back and I was like, we really don't have this going back home in Ghana. So I think
Mhm.
a year before I made the final move, I started talking to some people who had started local meetup groups, but were dormant. So I was like, you know what, you already have this going. I'm coming home, so why don't we just collaborate and get this going? So
Yeah.
immediately I got down, I started helping with, getting meetups running. We started having regular meetings every month, we get presentations and all that. Then somewhere last year, December, I'm also an MCT. So I was invited for the MCT Africa Summit in Nigeria. So prior to that, I had actually used only I think Power BI for business stuff, and then
Hmm.
tried Power Apps once when it was in the very early stages. Wasn't really enthused about it, so I kind of like just forgot about that. But I knew of I knew about Flow because we're doing a lot of automations, logic apps on the Azure side. So I was quite conversant with those ones. So I get to Nigeria in December, and this is Dona talking about the Power Platform, Let's Code. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on in this ecosystem that I missed? So I took time to look into it. I was like, oh my God, this has really evolved. This is really like grown.
Yeah.
So almost immediately, I started prepping my guys back in Ghana, like, you know what, something huge is about to happen. Something huge is about to happen. So prior to that, I had just started with my stream. I was doing IoT Tuesday and I was doing Functions Friday. So I just had 2 shows that was like based on IoT and Agile functions, and one on Sunday that was just demystifying technologies on the Microsoft Azure stack. So I was like, I came back, had a conversation with Donna. She pumped me up. I was like, we need to do this. So I came back to Accra, started the very first Power Platform user group, immediately converted the Sunday show to a Power Series show, renamed the Friday show to be Demystified Tech so I can encompass everything, but then maintain the Tuesday show. So 3 shows in a week. And, when I started, I was just like, you know what, just do this. And the likes of Mariano has been on the show, Alanchi has been on Nate Dona, Samit, like a lot of guys are being on the show, and like it's just blown out of proportion. It's actually spiraled. Like now I see a lot of people both in Ghana and in Nigeria coming up with Power Platform shows, coming up with and it's just amazing. And that's what I want to see that especially African continent grow with technology and move with this whole paradigm.
That is super awesome. Very cool story. And
Very cool.
Thanks for sharing that with us. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Shane. I know you've been in the industry for quite some time. You came up through the SharePoint ranks. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. So yeah, you stole all my thunder. I started in SharePoint and came up into a Power Apps person. Thanks. No.
Well, if you want to keep it that short.
No. So so we've got Samuel, the baby MVP. I'm an old man MVP, right? I just got number 15.
Woo!
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What
So
about, let me interrupt you for a second. Mariano, what was your number this time around?
13.
13. Steve?
Yeah.
I think I'm 6 or 7, something like that.
I just hit 9. So
we're
No.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's
So
move
Shane
on.
is the senior.
Shane's the old man for
Yeah.
sure. But one more thing before you finish your story, Shane. You seriously, you're like E.F. Hutton with Power Apps. When you speak, everyone
Pretty
stops
much.
and listens.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
truth.
I actually have a confession. I have actually been following way before I started this a lot of your shows, and I think I'm going to put you on the spot and maybe use this to told you to come on the Power Series show. We really need you on the show. Thank you.
well, you invite me and I will come speak. I mean, I'm on this rinky-dink show. Why would I come on yours?
True. Yep.
That is
No,
true.
no, I would love to. And anyone else that's listening, I do user groups all over the world. I love to do podcasts and these types of shows. I'm an attention fiend, right? So put a microphone in front of me, and if you want to talk about Power Apps, great. If you want to talk about Chewy, great. If you want to talk about my car, I don't care, right? I like to talk.
Yeah. So, is Chewy in the room with you?
You know what? Chewy is not. And the reason for that is it's a Thursday, and so our cleaning lady is here, and she gives him treats all day, so he follows her around, right? That's how you become 110 pounds. Chewy was supposed to be 50 to 60 pounds. Chewy weighs 110.
Oh my gosh.
Chewy is a very, very, very large dog.
So,
But he's loved.
Yes,
so,
he's very large.
yeah, so let's fit back Chewy within your story.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, I was coming back. And I thank you all for the kind words. I don't think I deserve them, but I really appreciate it. But yeah, so, if you back up about 15 or so years ago, I got into SharePoint when it was an infinite, right? So right about the time 2003 came out was when I was like, oh, I get this thing. And so I used to post in the news groups like a fiend. I mean, I think the 1 year or the 1 quarter that I did the numbers, like I did like 400 posts of answering people's questions. and the next closest person did like 80 or something, right? I mean, I was just like,
Yeah.
you know, and so that was kind of how I got this start in helping people. You know, I'm like, oh, I know the answer. Why shouldn't I just tell you this? And from there, I spun off a business, SharePoint 911. Did that for a long time. I wrote 6 SharePoint books. SharePoint. Finally, we sold SharePoint 911. I kind of finished up my time with the company that purchased us, and I'm like, all right, what do I do next? So I got really hardcore into PowerShell for a while. Because for SharePoint, you had to learn PowerShell, and I really enjoyed that. I have a YouTube video with just shy, like literally days away from being 1 million views on PowerShell.
Wow.
But what I found out, you guys probably appreciate this, is that no one is willing to pay for PowerShell help.
Yeah.
So while they love my videos, I couldn't feed my family on PowerShell.
Yeah.
So I ran into a friend who had just joined the Power Apps team at Microsoft, and he's like, I'm going to do Power Apps. I'm like, cool, I'm in. And I literally just decided to do Power Apps on a whim. But it fed my need, right? Because the thing I loved about PowerShell is I loved logic, right? Belinda, to your point before the show, we were talking about, math and numbers and that type of stuff. I really just love logic, and that's what I loved about PowerShell. And also with Power Apps, I'm like, cool, I can do this, but I can be visual at the same time.
Okay.
And so I got into it, and there was no documentation at that point. There was no nothing, right? It was just a platform.
Yeah.
And so I reverse engineered my way through it, and then I'm like, well, I bet other people would like to know about this, and started popping out some videos, and it turns out that people really enjoy watching Power Apps videos. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I am, I think right now I am just shy, like I'm just a few days away, or a few videos away from 100 Power Apps videos. So
Wow.
You get me
Congrats.
thinking all the time. I swear, even just your emails, your tweets, like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to post a video that does this. All of a sudden I'm like, dang. Now I have to think. I have to think for an hour, right? And so, how can I use that? What can it do? I do have a question for you.
Of course.
Maybe for everyone too. What is your favorite kind of app to build? Portal, model-driven, Canvas.
Oh, Canvas by a mile. I do not like Model at all, if we're being honest. Shh, don't tell anyone. And Portal, I think Portal's got a lot of potential, but there's still, for me, there's a licensing disconnect. It just doesn't work in the SMB space right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the other issue with Portal is it still needs a little more love, I think. So I 100% Canvas app. I don't know, Samuel, what do you think?
Yeah, I would also go for Canvas app. I mean, I'm the type that likes to build my own thing. So when you start, attaching stuff, I'm like, no, let me get all the control and build my stuff. So yeah, Canvas is it for me.
The way I like to think of it is the path of least resistance, right? So it allows you to do the things that you otherwise cannot do in Model and Portal. So I just love the fact that you can take things from concept to or 0 to 100 in no time, and that's the power of it.
I agree with you guys, but last weekend I got a wild hair to take some of my personal timekeeping, and I'm like, I'm going to put it in CDS, and I put it in CDS, and I was about to start building a Canvas app to track it. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to go into Model. And I am not kidding. 3 minutes later, I had a model-driven app working. And I'm like, oh, man, but I love Canvas apps. So, but it was 3 minutes later, I had an app. And it worked, and it was beautiful.
To its credit, though, model-driven applications is the true zero-code environment, right? So you just basically tell it, here's my entities. Go for it. And in 3 minutes, you have an app. You're really absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
But anyways.
The challenge there, though, is that I'm a control freak, right? And a lot of us are. We want to, because the model, she had a model-driven app in 3 minutes, but what if you decided, oh, I really wanted this thing to do X or Y, right? That's where it all goes to poo, for lack of a nicer way of putting it. And that's, I think, always been the disconnect for me, because especially, two challenges I really have is one, is I only ever get to work on the hard apps, right? I never get to build easy apps anymore. We have a whole team of people that do that. And so I only get the ones that are impossible problems, and so I think that's one is I can never just show a customer model-driven app and be like, live with that. They'd be like, ah! So, and I forget what my other point was, so I'll shut up. But that's, I think, the challenge of model apps is it's either take it what it is or don't use it.
So you gentlemen are some of the brightest and smartest in the community, and part of what I actually wanted to do today, and the drill, is let's ask you guys what you're working on. So I know you for one are a big representative down in Africa. With IoT especially. I know you're an IoT powerhouse, as you mentioned before, and that's kind of how you started your journey. So tell us what you're working on.
So working on a few things. I want to probably start with like the social good, the social part, and then coming to the other stuff. So just last week, my outfit actually got the the Microsoft Learning partner. We got the Microsoft Learning partnership. And, in times of COVID, people are struggling. People want to learn. People want to get certified and all that. So what we're trying to do is that for the students and the entire community, we want to, allow them to take the fundamentals. So fundamentals of AZ 900, PL 900, all the fundamental Agile and business applications, and want to give them the training for free, literally for free, and then try to see if we can get some exam vouchers so they can certify. That's what we're doing on the social side. We're also ramping up a lot of virtual events to get people, to learn different technologies. So that's one of the key things I'm doing in the social side.
So Sam, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You talked about one of your focuses is helping people with the exams, which is a very noble cause. I guess I would just ask you, do you see value, or do they see value in passing the exams and getting the certification? Like, does the job market there, or the job market that you're familiar with, is there a value on that?
So, yeah. So what we've identified is that there are a lot of people that are interested, especially when we started the Power Platform user group and then, the Agile.net user group. Now, we realized that there are a lot of people, who want to get into it, and there's a lot of business. So one of the things I realized immediately I came down from the US was that a lot of the companies, like most of the banks and I think insurance and financial sectors, were heavily invested in Microsoft technologies. They are heavily invested in it. But the problem is that they keep always coming back to us to look, we're looking for resource. We're looking for certified resource. We're looking for certified training, official training. Unfortunately, for especially my part of the world, there isn't a lot of specialized or certified professionals. So you have just a few people who are certified on the Microsoft ecosystem, and the rest who are not. So bridging that gap becomes a huge thing. And yes, obviously there's the training, and truly, there are just a few Microsoft Learning partners that do training geared towards certification. Else, you probably go to any of this tech institutions, just go learn the general thing and kind of you're on your own. So we realized that would be an area to help with. So if we're able to subsidize it and make it quite affordable for them to get certified, we are actually increasing the pipeline to get a lot more certified professionals on the Microsoft ecosystem. And then also to, bring awareness, because from my experience in meetups back in the States, we have meetups and you have people from companies, from states, from different places, either coming to recruit, coming to find solutions to their problems, or just coming to hang out to learn something new. So with this, we're trying to create an ecosystem where we can actually create that pipeline and create that network for people to grow. So that's one of the reasons why, we're deciding to do that. But yeah, there's in recent times, it has been very, it's been in high demand, especially for this time. People want to use the opportunity to get certified, to learn, to understand a lot of things, so that when we go post-COVID, we see a lot of opportunities coming. So it's only going to be for those that have prepared themselves, to meet those opportunities. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing that. So that's on the social side. And on the stuff that I'm working on, yes, like Mariano mentioned, so with all this COVID thing happening, a common thing you see here is something we call the Veronica bucket. I don't know if I can share my screen.
If you
Yeah, you
can't,
can. You
try.
should be able to.
If you can't,
Yeah.
I will set it so you can. See if you could share.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I think I can do
Okay.
that. Yep.
Okay.
So let me know if you can see my screen.
We see.
Yep.
Yep. So this is the backstory. So what you're seeing on the left is what is very common now in Ghana and most African countries, where it's like just a bucket, a huge bucket, and then the faucet is connected to it. So one morning my wife, just came to me and said, Samuel, I I want one of this bucket, but I want it automated. And I was like, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna do this? I was like, okay, well, I'm an IoT person, I'm a geek, and I can mess around with things. Ran into, the plumbing store, got myself some, PVC pipes, did some sketches, and then 5 days later, on your right, that's what we have. I looked into my IoT stuff, and I had, this whole bunch of servos, sensors, and all that. And then I put together this, hands-free system that automatically dispenses the soap, automatically dispenses water, and then in the very recent update, I've actually added the paper towel is also dispensed automatically. And
Wow.
that I was like, so in doing all this, I wasn't sharing this. I wasn't sharing any of this. I was just like keeping it to myself and just doing my own thing. And then a friend of mine in the community was like, Samuel, no, people want to see these things. Like most of us do these things, we don't document it, we don't show people what we're doing, and people want to learn how to do this thing. So why don't we, document and put it out? I was like, Ishmael, are you sure? I was like, yeah, let's do this. So, he came over to the house and then we just started recording like every step of the things I was doing. We just place the camera there and just like do a time lapse. And then we just started sharing it. And, I used to be a Hackstar ambassador back in Portland. And recently I got, announced as a new Hackstar ambassador for Accra, which is the first of its kind. So I published it there. And then it won one of the, Impact Awards for, I think it's a UNICEF Impact Award. So they're trying to get people, to build stuff here. So that's like something that has been hanged on my neck that I'm really interested and appreciate to do. I can actually walk you through the whole process, but it's quite simple. I've shared the schematics on Hackstar. We can actually put that. I can share that in the chat so that our viewers can actually go check it out. So it's a very simple schematic made up of some water pumps, and then a bunch of ultrasonic sensors. It's running on an Arduino. There's a relay, a servo for the paper dispensing, and a batch of back convert, the solar power into the various voltage required by the system. So the setup is currently running on it's solar powered. We're trying to get it into a much modular and easier to use system. But now to actually add to that, I was actually also working on the smart bin version, which I stored. I don't know if you can see this, but
stop sharing your screen for a moment so that we can see you a little bigger.
Yeah. So let's do this. Let's go to the screen, and then I'm going to stop sharing. Yep.
Okay, there you go.
So
there you go.
Yeah. So this was the supposed to be the complementary part to the whole washing thing, because we want everything to be hands free, right? So after you've washed your hands, you've cleaned your hands, you just don't want to touch the bin. So if you look closely here, there is an ultrasonic sensor here which can be activated by your foot. So you just wave your leg in front of it, or there's also one at the top here.
Wow.
That you can easily just wave to, and then it actually opens it up. And if you look closely, I have
like
the
stickers.
Power Ultimate stickers.
So now that you showed us the IoT aspect of it, have you planned of integrating this with the Power Platform? And if so, what have you thought?
Yes. So actually, the the bin, for instance, the reason why I deliberately put the BI and the automate there is that it's gonna there's also another. Let me just show. I don't know how I'm gonna do, but let me just show this quickly. So if you look inside it, there is another ultrasonic sensor there. So what's happening is that if this is getting full, it's going to be reporting to using Power Automate. It's going to be reporting.
Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
So kind of like a
That is super cool.
I was thinking the other way. I was thinking the Arduino would say, hey, we've had, since I notified you last, we've had 100 people washing their hands, so you need to refill the water in the soap.
Exactly.
Oh, you are going to do that. Okay.
The entire system is going to be automated. So, for instance, I'm trying to get a couple of people to help me, like, put everything into one mobile unit that can be put at various stations. So there's going to be components where, like, for instance, there's going to be sensors to check the water level. We're going to the soap level, because we need to know there's enough liquid soap, enough water, the roll of tissue. And then as people are washing their hands, we're tracking that. Another thing I'm working on is AI. So we're going to put some small cameras. So according to the UN, there's supposed to be some ways we are supposed to be washing our hands, all that.
Oh,
so
awesome.
we're going to use AI to record the way people actually are washing. We're going to gamify it. So by the time you finish washing, if you were able to do it the way that the UN or the standard way of washing, we're going to rate you from, let's say, 1 to 10. And then there's going to be a display to tell you how well you did and all. Kind of like, gamifying it to let people, do that.
That's
now, with
super
a bin, a bigger project is actually using this as a proof of concept to help waste management in my area. So we can have like smart bins where we can actually have efficient use of our waste management companies. I don't have to be coming around when I don't need to. What is the optimum route to go pick waste and all that? So that's like the big picture. The only thing is that my supply of hardware and sensors, especially I needed a particular servo motor to do this. I ran out of it, and due to COVID, I haven't still been able to get the actuator to get this opening. That's what is starting. But that's what's happening. And there's actually a recent project I'm working on. I'm here to get a bill of materials. Is people have complained that we've been washing our hands. That's fine, but we go to places and droplets and all that. Our clothes, our shoes. So I'm trying to work on a mister, also using PVC. I always love to use PVC, like a very simple one that, a frame like that I can just put in front of my door or my gate, and then with a motion sensor and all that. So once you're coming, it misting your whole clothes and everything. So you get some level of. So that's what's happening. And definitely I'll be sharing that.
Well, we'll definitely have you come and install one here at home.
Yeah. I have an idea for your hand rating sensor. Instead of showing 1 to 10, you have a little parrot, a stuffed parrot. And if someone does a good job, the parrot could go, bravo. And if you do a bad job, it could say, you're a dirty bird. And so...
That's actually
Where do you come up with this stuff, Belinda?
No,
I don't know.
This is the thing.
That's actually a good one.
And that was not the first time that she's done a parrot voice, though. That was spot on.
Sure not.
No, it wasn't.
That's spot on.
Yeah.
So I love the use of Power Automate for that, because you can have a system that works fine. You have another system that collects data or whatever, but bridging them is often surprisingly difficult. So talking to an IoT device and sending that data to a backend system, it can be really challenging. You don't want to have to write your own custom web server, web service polls, automation platform, and you've got to host that somewhere. Power Platform and Power Automate, it's hosted, it's SaaS, it's 3 clicks to connect to something, and you're up and running. So in a really lean, low-cost environment, it sounds like a great solution.
It does.
Actually, I'm speaking on that on 15th on the Powerful Dev Conf. So I'll be showing IoT, the Power Platform.
Nice.
And in the past, I've actually done things like tracking my beer intake. So backstory, this is very, very funny story. So, I love my beer. But what happens is that as I'm drinking the beer, I lose count. So there was this one day I went to the fridge.
That happens to every one of us.
And everything was good. I was asking my wife, what happened to my beer? And it's like, well, you're the one who drinks beer. And it was like, no, I swear I know I had about 6 or something in the fridge. Like, please. So I was like, okay, how do I solve it? So I don't know if you heard about the flick buttons.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I got one, and that's like a picture of like beer on it. So what I did was, oh yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So what I did with this flick button was that and I, like you mentioned, I love to use the Power Platform because I can create my dashboards and the app, with rapid time. So what I did was, anytime I pick a beer from the fridge, I click it, and it kind of counts. I click it, and it counts. I click. So when I'm left with like 5 beers, it sends me a text message and all that, and then it also creates like a pro forma invoice, to order like.
It
Like
sends you or it sends your wife.
So, yes, it's my wife. And make it even complicated, I actually add an approval workflow. So if the wife says, no, we're not buying it, nothing happens.
Yeah.
So these are just, like you mentioned, these are just ways I've been trying to merge, the physical world with the power of IoT. And I keep telling people that you could be running a fleet of cars. You could be running every business you run, you can always connect it to the Power Platform, be it dashboards, be it automation from, Flow, be it even agent, to the extent that I could, connect the same bin and ask it to be like status of the bin at any time, So that's one of the huge things that I'm a real huge fan of, and trying to get people to understand and the power, of the Power Platform. Yeah.
Very, very cool.
And Samuel, that's a great point that I always try to reinforce with people is, your beer example, it's so much more fun to make this app and learn about the tech if you're doing it around beer or around your, car, or something that you love. Don't make your first project be something your boss is standing over you going, get this done. Make your first project something that makes it easier for you to drink more beer, and it'll go so much easier.
Now,
Yeah,
Shane,
absolutely.
I remember, Shane, I was watching you on something, and you talked about building, it might have been Power Automate with your Tesla. What was that? I can't remember what the thing was.
Yeah, so the Tesla has a complete API, right? So you can start the car, you can turn on the AC, you can get all the you can do anything with that car via an API. I am not a dev. I have never written a line of C# in my life. I am scared of APIs. I don't even know what it means. And JSON, it's like a hipster way of spelling Jason. I don't even know. But so my first API app was one to control my car. I built a Power app to control my car via Power Automate running these API calls, because that was a place I was like, I'm nerdy about my car, so learning to do APIs in that context was a lot more fun for me. So when that first project that showed up that said, hey, do something against the Graph API, I'm like, fine. I had API familiarity, but it was all because I wrote an app that'll literally let me drive my car without my keys. Yeah.
I didn't know you were one of like me, a citizen developer.
Yes, ma'am. never written a line of C# code in my life.
Oh, well, I have, and it makes me cry. And I don't do it well. So
I can't.
Well, that's probably still a good segue to ask Shane what is he been working on, and what keeps you up at nights.
Oh gosh. Well, so this week, it's my 11-year-old who has all of a sudden decided he doesn't want to go to bed anymore. Oh wait, no, that's not what you meant, is it? No. So for me, Mariano, it's been, recently, just this week, they announced that SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013 workflows are bye-bye. Very harsh announcement, very sudden. I think starting August 1st, you can't create them, and by November 1st, they're going to delete them all. So people are a little freaked out over that. So what I've been trying to do recently is, obviously I've built plenty of SharePoint workflows in my day, is trying to help people bridge the gap. Like, hey, okay, I got to get off the SharePoint Designer. Did you guys know SharePoint Designer was free? Anybody remember that joke? When it got released, it was like this terrible Twitter joke that would not die for like 5 years. So anyway, so I've been working on Power Automate's replacements for those, and just understanding exactly all the ways that with SharePoint Online, Power Automate's already built in a pretty neat way. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to help people learn that. That's actually probably the video I'm going to record for my YouTube channel tomorrow.
Is that the thought process, that Power Automate will take over the workflow for him?
Yeah. Even in Microsoft's official announcement, it references Power Automate's the new correct way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here, if I can share my screen here, let me pull this
And while
over.
you're doing that, that's probably true for every other aspect of workflow automation, right? We're seeing it with Dynamics 365, with Business Central, with everything that pretty much touches or has some sort of workflow embedded. Power Automate seems to be the replacement for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is great, right? Microsoft hopefully is going to finally standardize, and they're not going to create a competitor to Power Automate in a week and be like, oh, we have 2 workflow tools again.
Yep.
Because that's been our big challenge for all these years, right? So we had SharePoint Designer workflows, we had all these other tools, we had. You guys remember what was the the automation BizTalk
Central.
BizTalk, yeah.
BizTalk.
BizTalk, right? I mean, oh my goodness, no thank you.
You're preaching to the choir, Shane, because Mariano and Steve and I, if you recall, we come from the Dynamics family, the ERP side. So we were like one of, what, 5? 4? 4.
Of what?
Of
Products?
Microsoft Dynamics ERP products.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So we totally get that. Okay, so go ahead.
No, it's always good to think about where, because we all have a different story of how we got here, and it's important.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I've been kind of playing with, is, and I don't know if you guys have noticed or if your viewers have all noticed, but if you come into SharePoint Online and you go into a modern SharePoint site, so let's go to my favorite employees list that I have demoed a million times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hit the automate drop down up here.
Wait a minute, I've always wanted to ask you, is that your wife?
Yes.
Nicola? Increase the picture so we can see her. She looks so pretty. Oh, she is pretty. Okay, go ahead. I've always wanted to ask you that.
And she's a truck driver, Belinda.
She's pretty.
I'm married up. I can't tell you. Yeah. So.
Oh no, CEO. I'm sorry.
Oh,
the second one says truck driver. Greg.
Yeah. So
sorry.
funny enough, she is the actual smart one here. She has an MBA. She is the CEO of the company.
Okay.
She was the CEO of SharePoint 911. Like, she literally is the boss. It's that, right? People always assume I joke because apparently the idea of a woman being in charge is joking. I don't know, but she really does. She owns a majority of the company. This is her thing. I'm just a pretty talking face. So there you go. A little backstory. No one's ever asked about the Nicola story.
I've always wanted to. I was like, every time you look, I'm like, oh, I wanted to zoom in. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, a side note to that, it's funny, like when people engage with Power Apps 911, they're like, hey, I want to, do a thing. And so they get on a call with her because she handles a lot of the bigger new client intake. They'll be like, oh my God, right? Because people never know, are these people real or not? And when they work with them for the first time and find out that, yes, Nicola really is a real person, it's like they have this moment. So it's always fun. The only person that's not real here, now you just want backstory, is Ferguson.
Oh, okay.
So I needed another character for one of my demos, and so obviously Chewy is real.
Right.
And so I needed Chewy to have a nemesis, so that's where Ferguson's title is Chewy's nemesis. And Ferguson, the name comes from the TV show New Girl. So
yes.
What's his name? Oh my goodness. I can't think of his name. Winston. Winston gets a cat by stealing it from a girlfriend that he breaks up with. And the cat's name is Ferguson. So I don't know how. That somehow is how I have Ferguson the cat. There you go. Way more information than you wanted about something.
No, I liked it. I liked it.
I figured a lot of you have watched a lot of the videos. You've seen a lot of these characters, so now you have a little story on all the characters.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Anyway, so up here at the top, you've got automate. And so to Mariano's question, I spent a week. I've always noticed this stuff, but never really understood what was all here. So I think I can kind of walk you guys through and give you a pretty good overview of what is actually here and how this works, which is not something I could do on Monday. So one of them is, you see there's automatically a set a reminder. And so this particular flow shows up if you have a SharePoint list with a date column. It just automatically made this flow called set a reminder. I didn't do anything. If you click on hire date, what will happen is that flow doesn't actually exist. It is going to create that flow for me.
Wow.
And so when you say continue here, it will provision it, and we'll just switch over to Flow real quick and show you what that looks like. Somewhere in here.
Somewhere among the 1,000 flows that you have, right?
Can we just talk about the fact that I have way too many? That's not how you
that
spell
also
it.
tells us they still don't allow folders and grouping in Power Automate.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe Anyway, when you create this, what will
Vote it
happen?
up,
We're just create it
Steve.
together. So get an email reminder. Oh, that's why. So they create. So this is going to create a flow for me. And why this is important, because one of the keys to learning, remember we talked about I had to learn Power Platform before there was any content. Yay me.
Yeah.
But if we go over here now, we should see that. Oh, I'm in Team Flows. We're not going to see it in Team Flows. There it is. They provisioned a flow for me. And what's amazing is there's a beauty of Power Platform. There's no magic here. It's all right here.
Yeah.
So you guys can come in here, see how they made it work, see all their formulas for adding days to a date. But more importantly, if you're like, oh, I want to change this. I want it to send out a tweet when the reminder happens. Or I want to have it text me. You can extend this. And I think this is how you get started, right? Let it make you a flow and then just tweak it a little. Yeah. So this to me was like probably my favorite find of the week was this reminder one that just randomly shows up because I have a date. And it's this one because I have a date. Yeah. So then I'm like, all right.
That is very cool.
Yeah, right? Fun. So then let's click on Power Automate. And so here there is create a flow. This would just go create a flow using this as a template. Meh, not exciting. See your flows, opens up the browser tab I was just in. But configure your flows, opens this thing. And I'm like, what does this do? And so it turns out that by default, when you create your list, if it's a modern list, it automatically is configured to have this request sign-off flow. And if we hit cancel, so you're like, but I don't see request sign-off. You don't. Oh, okay, you clicked on Power Apps. If you click on Automate, you still don't see it. But that one is tied to a selected item. So maybe I want to remember when to fire Daniel, right? Poor Daniel sent me a bad picture, and I will just... He sent me new ones. He wants me to change it out. I refuse.
Well, then you'd have to change his title.
Right? Look at this guy. Daniel's my favorite. Shh, don't tell anybody. But I pick on him a lot. Anyway, but now that I've picked on the creepy dude, if you hit automate up here, now request sign off shows up. And so then now it is going to say, hey, it's going to run a flow. So request sign off, you can't see the flow, but I can choose, oh yeah, I want Chewy to sign off on this for me. And so then it is going to start a flow approval process and get that approved by sending Chewy an email. And when he responds, it'll come in. And if you look, I have to refresh the browser. This is a bug. Over here on the far right, now there's a column called sign off status that is populated with whether it's pending or it's approved or rejected.
That's awesome.
So that'll end up. So
ahead.
if you had like a vacation request, that's going to be still yet another way that you can monitor the approval process and connect back. Sorry, thinking out loud. See, I told you do this to me, huh?
That's the whole. That's what I do, Belinda. If you ever take my actual classes, I plant seeds, right? I just want to plant little seeds in your guys' brains and let you run and build something awesome with it. I just want to plant. But so then I'm like, all right, well, cool. So then what about if I go to content approval? And this one, it took me hours to figure out. So I'm going to save you guys a bunch of pain, or maybe you're smarter than me and figured it out faster. But if you choose content approval, and I'm actually not going to click it, I kind of want to break this one. But when you do content approval, you don't actually get anything. So it doesn't give you any pre-built flow. What it does is it actually goes over and it turns on SharePoint approvals for you. So it flips this switch for you. And so then the idea is then it's up to you to write your own flow to go through and do the approval process, but they don't do an approval flow for you. They just turn on the pieces. So that was weird to me, and it took me a while to confirm that that's truly what doesn't happen.
What was happening? Yeah.
So when I found that out in my So I have a Power Apps in Flow class just for SharePoint people. So I went in and added into that class complex SharePoint approval demo. So I'm like, all right, cool. I got to show you guys how to do your own. And so I can give you guys this is what they learn in class. But I kind of went through here and I just made it really complex on purpose. Like we start out simple and we just expand. So you're seeing the end result. But so not only am I getting your manager for part of the approval, I'm also going and looking up in a different SharePoint list to see if the state that you want to add something for, so like if you're adding a company you work with to the state of Ohio, is there an approver for the state of Ohio companies to be added? If there is, right, then we set the approver to be, that value that comes out of SharePoint. And if not, then Chewy is the approver for all states that don't have a designated approver.
Yeah.
A little fun. I threw in a history list, right? Because in SharePoint workflow days, we always had history lists. So I thought it was kind of fun to have that same functionality. Then I run the approval. And then I don't even remember what I do. And then I update, at the end, you have to update the SharePoint item and set the approval status back to wherever it is. It's up here somewhere. There it is. There's the approval. But that was just such a fun rabbit hole for me to go down, because one of the things that we have found from building approvals for people is basically no one has the same approval process. Who knew?
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's about figuring out, which of these pieces of the puzzle make work for you. Well, one more crazy one that I found hidden. Of course you do.
Yes, I do.
It turns out, right? Because Belinda's loving this. She's like, I know what I'm doing.
I am.
Random shade things.
I love SharePoint list. So go ahead.
So then here, if we go to our pages library, there is actually a special approval for a configure page approval flow. So the pages have their own pre-built approval process that Microsoft just slipped in here. Like, haha, here it is. And I think that's a lot of the fun of this. And I feel like Flow stuff just keeps getting sprinkled in here. And then, it's on us to kind of trip over it and then click the buttons a bunch of times and figure out what it is and then make a YouTube video about it.
Flow is so stinking amazing. I mean, it just has no limits.
It really is crazy. And the more that you learn about Flow, the more you realize you don't know anything about Flow.
Yeah.
That is true.
That is it's insane. Like, so, like this morning I spent nope, not this one. Let me show you the Flow I just finished this morning that I hadn't even recorded yet. So I'm showing you before I even made the video about it. Complex. It's not that one. So this one. So here I'm walking through, import. So selecting a file in SharePoint, you can prompt for input along the same with doing the file. And so like in my case over here, when I go to the employees, and if I choose, no, not employees, to documents, and then when I choose like this Excel file to import, so we'll say automate and import to SharePoint. So I'm asking them, hey, basically, do you want to write the results over to Teams when it's all said and done? So we're taking input at this point. I thought this was cool. Right here in the browser, send to Teams, yes or no. So then we're going to go through, we make some variables. We then interrogate the Excel file to get the tables out of it. And one of the things I realized is that people might actually try to run this on a non-Excel file or an Excel without tables. So then I wrote the logic to, hey, if this get tables fails, send them some email like, hey, dummy. I took out the hey, dummy. I wrote hey, dummy, and I took it out. But, do better next time. And then kind of my guidance. Because, for us super nerds or even moderate nerds, it's very easy for us to be like, all right, I did this thing, and if it breaks, I can go look at the logs and figure it out. But I wrote one of these for a customer where, it was going to be someone that is not a nerd at all, right? That's more of just a person that does other types of work. Anyway, they want to be able to upload files and have them process. And so every step of the process, I have one of these type of catches. And so if it breaks and, step 4, it sends him or her a very specific email and says, hey, your process broke here. This is the reason the most likely reason it broke. and then it tells them what to do. Because in certain scenarios, they can just reprocess the file.
Yeah.
Other scenarios, they need to go purge data before you know what I mean? So I tried to make this thing as user-friendly as possible. It was really hard for me, but now they just upload a file and they either get an email that says it's done, or they get an email that says, oh, you messed up, and here's what we think you did wrong.
I
So,
like that.
Not foolproof, but me spending an extra 4 or 5 hours of adding that type of logic greatly improved the chances that this could be self-maintained without someone like myself having to come in and be like, oh, this is why your file failed today.
And have you looked into the try-catch feature of Power Automate?
I build my own version.
Okay.
And the reason for that, so I don't know, Macy, why don't you take a second? Will you explain what try-catch is?
So try-catch, I think of it as a carryover from the C# type, the programming world JavaScript. And so the try is, hey, give this a try, and you know that there is the possibility that that may fail or succeed. And so it's built in there. You're not having to jump through hoops or do, gymnastics to try and determine whether something succeeded or failed. And so there's a nice, simple try-catch step in Power Automate that says, hey, if it succeeds, what do you want me to do? And you continue down branch A. If it fails, you can go down branch B, and you can re-loop back into your main flow. So you're not having to stop, discontinue, or abort, or just give up.
Or simply have the flow fail.
Right. And so you don't want a dead end. You want to say, hey, I don't want to leave this user stranded because this one step failed. Let me just kick it back up the chain so they can retry that step, and you can more gracefully handle that. So I see you have an only on failure condition on that email. So you could have that on your catch block, and the rest succeeds seamlessly. But on your catch block, you could go back and perhaps redirect to identify the correct file, for instance.
Yep. No, that's a great explanation. Thank you. You did a much better job than I did. That's why I made you do it. So for me, what I have found is as soon as I say something like try catch, everyone who doesn't have a development background tunes out. So I make a poor man's try catch here, and people are like, oh, that makes complete sense, right? And you immediately saw it. It's the same thing, but
it's just an error handler. Yep.
Yeah. And you just taking out the words try and catch. I feel like I've made it more accessible.
But
to your
totally
point,
valid. Totally valid point.
No, but I think it's a challenge there. It's a double-edged sword because I think at the same time, I think developers watch my content and they go, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing, right? And I mean, honestly, I know try catch, and whatever. There's another try catch and else, right?
Or try catch finally. Sorry, try catch finally.
I've written plenty of complex stuff like that, but one of the things I always recommend to people that are trying to make YouTube content, it turns out there's a lot of people, there you go, Belinda, citizen developer. A lot of people, though, ask me, like, hey, what should I do to make YouTube, right? They want to be, they want to make a lot of YouTube stuff. I'm like, cool. One of the biggest problems I see with a lot of people's YouTube content is that they try to show how smart they are. Right? They try to show something super amazing and nerdy, which is awesome. I love them for it because I want to learn that thing. But the audience that wants to learn super nerdy is so much smaller than the Belindas of the world that just want a simple explanation of what to do if this thing errors. So yeah, it's a tough line. I'm kind of trading one for the other.
No, and I would agree with you. After doing the type of work that I do for 10 plus years, 15 years now, the simpler solution is what I've found works better for my customers. It's not the Windows service with some elaborate architecture that sends to Splunk logging and blah, blah. No, they want a text file. They want a CSV. Why? Because a CSV opens natively in Excel. They don't want some elaborate relational database that does fancy things, because how does an end user open a SQL Server database table? It's like, no, put it in a CSV. Every single user knows how to work with a CSV.
Right.
High five, Steve.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like so. The Power Platform added the logging pieces that go out to the Azure service for that. I forget what it's even called. And everybody's like, "Oh, why aren't you showing that?" I'm like, A, I don't know how it works. B, to your point, right? Not everyone else knows how any of that works. Yeah. Whereas if my customer wants to do logging, you know what I do? I make another table, I call it history, and I just write crap to it. And they're like, but you could do all this awesome. My customer doesn't want awesome.
Right.
You want to be able to come in a week later and be like, hey, this important thing got changed, Shane. Who changed it? There it is. So once a year we look through this database. Why spend 100 hours integrating that amazing reporting? That stuff is awesome. If you need it, go for it. Your customers, my customers, they don't care. They want a file where they can just be like, hey, what happened?
Totally agree.
That's one of the things. That's one of the things I love about the whole Power Platform is there is room to use the exact same tool set for both the pro developer and the citizen developer, and I love that. I absolutely love that, and sometimes we're actually using the exact same feature set and just referring to it in different ways, but. I like to joke that I'm bilingual. I speak geek and civilian, and just like I speak Yankee and Southern. So
I have a question for both of you, Shane and Samuel. Have you found situations where you get 90% of the way, 95% of the way with Power Automate, and you run into that one hurdle, that one feature that it can't do? And that is one concern I've had. I prototyped a few Power Automate, Power App solutions. Everything looks great until I realize, there is one limitation that is an absolute deal killer for this.
Yeah, I think Mariano, I asked for your opinion on that. I think mine had to do with was it maps? Something about Google Maps or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to get the feed to generate some point, and I had everything in the flow, working perfect, and got to that point. I was like, oops, how do I deal with this? And I spoke to Vivek and a couple of people, like some, Indians work around, to get to it. But at that point, they are like, oh no, I wish, it could do this. Yeah. But one of the things I've actually come to appreciate about the team is that they're really evolving and they take a lot of feedback. And like, there's something you couldn't do like a couple of weeks ago. And if you're running in the preview mode, you're like, oh, it's there, it's happening. And then you start jumping. So, so that's what I'm actually, I'm confident and, happy about that fact that it's going to grow, it's going to evolve. Like you're saying, Microsoft is trying to get, Automate as that single tool. So hopefully, we get almost all the things checked out. But also for our pro devs, it gives them opportunity as well. So, I always get this question, well, does it mean I'm approved? Am I going out of business? I'm like, no, you're not going out of business. The citizen developer can do, a drag and drop, fill the very basic stuff. But if you go to Automate, there is a lot of expressions that even most people are not even aware. There are tons of like functions and expressions in there. So if you're a pro developer, there's a whole lot of avenue for you to explore. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, so it's interesting, Steve. That's a great question from the standpoint that there's two types of problems that you run into, right? One is Flow absolutely just can't do it, right? So, for example, it can't make my bed, right? There's not a way. Right. So, maybe Samuel's got an IoT device.
Yeah, we can figure it out.
He'll get some PVC pipe and a little Raspberry Pi, and it'll make the bed for you, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
So I never say never. But what I also run into a lot of times, though, is and the hardest part of this is sometimes you have to imagine the problem from a different point of view.
Yeah.
My favorite example is I had a customer who uses a Power App to schedule events. So like they're going to go to Tech Ed next year and to Inspire and all these things. And so they schedule them a year or two out. But what they wanted to do was they wanted to say 30 days before the event, they wanted to confirm that the booth has been shipped. And so his first solution was, okay, I'm going to make this thing, I'm going to have a flow and say wait until 30 days from the event start, which is, 2 years from now, and then have this flow continue. Well, Flow has a 30-day limit. right? It can only wait 30 days before it freaks out. So he's like, oh man, Flow sucks. It can't do anything. I hate this.
Right.
Ah. I'm like, slow down.
Hold on.
Let's think about this a different way. And so instead, what do? We write a flow that runs every day at 8 a.m. and checks to see is there any events 30 days out that haven't had their booth shipped, and then they action.
Yep.
Same in solution, right?
Yep.
And so that is what we find the most here is that we run into all the time. People are like, Power Automate can't do this or Power Apps can't do that. Maybe it can't do it the way that you originally thought of, which is fair, but try to reimagine the problem. And 99 times out of 100, so far I'm undefeated in figuring out another way to get there. And now that I know I can get my bed made, I'm all set.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Sometimes I find it's also the data source that you're using too. So if you're starting from the ground up, you're really getting an opportunity to pick your data source to begin with. For example, I was talking about putting my time in CDS. So no doubt I've tried SharePoint lists and tried a few things, and I've tried Excel. And as I keep going through these different iterations, because it's really more of a learning process than it is anything else, I find that sometimes just picking a different data source helps me get to the goal I'm trying to achieve, because it does maybe it's just opening my eyes up to a different way of doing things, like you mentioned, Shane. So I don't know, but I find that for some reason kind of like expands it for me. I don't know.
To me, the opportunity for pro devs is more towards what we already talked about, the PCF components, the custom connectors, that extra 5% that you can't do if you ever run into that to me is what the real opportunity is, but not reinventing the wheel because you couldn't do this one little piece of the 5%. Now you're going to actually go and rewrite everything in Xamarin. That to me is like, so.
And that's a good point. I can develop a custom web service that runs on IIS or Azure and talks to SQL servers, but do I want to spend 40 hours doing that as part of an overall larger solution? And I've demoed this at Power Platform World Tour, in less than 5 minutes, I can have a fully functional custom web service with authentication, talking to any data source you want, hosted in the cloud, 0 footprint, not a single line of code. I mean, it is mind-blowing. And if the
talking to a multitude of services.
Exactly. And the challenge I find is I can build that in 5 minutes, and the customer's like, well, wait, is that a real solution? And they're like, I don't know if I trust that. I'm like, it took 5 minutes. You can pay me $5,000 to do the alternative, but why don't we start with this and see how it works, and you let me know from there. So very powerful, even if it is just filling gaps in an overall larger solution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and one more thing. You see this little keychain, Samuel? You were talking about like citizen developers not being able to do some things. Wrong, dude. We could do a lot of things. Shame on you. We might not be able to make and build PCF components, but we could do a lot of things.
I see IoT and Azure in your future, Belinda.
I had the summer of Azure a couple years ago, and that was a whole summer of Azure, and the best thing about being an MVP, I always say, is my Rolodex file, which is a very outdated phrase, but I have a good contact list, so I had a lot of really good Microsoft people helping me in Belinda's summer of Azure, which has helped with things like cognitive services, but because I'm not afraid of Azure at all, and doing some things there. So I know we're over on time, but I want to ask you guys. Oh, we have. Okay.
We actually over time, and
but I do have one quick question. And this could be for any of you. Are any of you using Azure Data Lakes?
Nope.
Not yet.
Briefly, but not in production.
I just saw a presentation of someone who is using it to store Business Central data. So it's a high volume Business Central customer, and they're pulling that into CDS because apparently the connectors are high volume between Business Central and CDS. and they do synchronization to CDS, and then they ultimately want to push that data to data lakes. And I think they had some other technical requirements that made that the path, but they want to get all their data in data lakes for heavy duty data analysis.
Yeah, I saw that session with you, and because
Okay, yep.
I was thinking of I was thinking about like, the feasibility of using data lakes for more of a database. I love SharePoint list. I use SharePoint list always, but like what is it? About a 5,000 row record seems to database seems to slow things down. Is that right? Shane,
So
you got to answer that one.
I was just going to see if I was muted or not. I mean, SharePoint gets slower the more records you have. That is for sure. In a standpoint, if you're wanting to do the back and forth. Now, Microsoft would tell you can have 1 trillion items in your SharePoint list. Technically, you can, as long as you don't ever need to get them out of there. But yeah, the back and the forth, every time you add another 100 to the list, you feel it. You know it's a little slower.
So I guess, Belinda, and I don't know if you've asked this question. I don't know that I'm convinced. I'm still wondering what is the use case in our market, or at least in my market, the SMB space, for CDS and data lakes. I don't see it. Data lakes I see as a massive, massive data set. Like if you want 20 years of weather data for the entire United States, that's my interpretation of data lakes. So I guess I'd love to have a separate conversation, like CDS, data lakes.
We
Why
can
would you
get
use
some
rather
data
than
lakes
SQL?
MVPs next time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, is any of that relevant for the SMB space? I don't know.
Probably.
I think that would be an overkill because data lake mostly, for processing. If the company is heavy on ETLs or data warehouse processing, all those, then you probably be looking into that. But SMEs, I wouldn't probably recommend that.
Okay, so one more similar question: Are any of you using the Common Data Service for something other than Dynamics 365 data?
I mean, I've built a lot of Power Apps, Canvas apps on CDS as the data source. With the licensing change, basically, SQL and CDS cost the same to use. And so we've had plenty of apps built on CDS as the data source.
I'm really digging CDS. It took me a while to get completely convinced, but I'm getting more and more convinced of it.
Convince me, Belinda. Separate session, but convince me.
Well, guys, you have been absolutely generous with your time.
Thank you very much.
We are extremely delighted you came on board for this session, and we would love to have you back in the future. Thank you so much. Have a good one, everybody. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Toodles.
Bye-bye.
All right, the streaming